Hey, Ryan Cassata, and welcome to the Tick Bootcamp podcast.
Thanks for having me on.
We're really excited to have introduce you to the folks in our community, and as excited as I am to introduce you to the community, I'm really excited as well to reintroduce one of our good friends, Maria Mooney, to our podcast. She was actually one of the most downloaded episodes we had early on in our podcast, and she is now, I think, Maria, is this the fourth or fifth time you've co-hosted with me?
Yes, I'm so happy to be here. It feels like family every time, and it's always wonderful to catch up and be inspired by the guests that you have. I'm always inspired, and I feel like, jumping off of here and just telling everyone what I heard. And so I'm super, super happy to be here.
Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you. So it's really cool, and we want to bring Ryan into the family. You're a new member of the family, Ryan, and you are currently in Los Angeles, California.
Yeah.
So talk to us about LA and how long you've been living in LA.
I've been in LA since 2016. Before that, I was in San Francisco since I was 18. And then before that, I am from Long Island, Bayshore, New York. So, yeah.
Yeah, something we have in common. So I guess the bad news for the folks who are listening to this podcast is we actually have three East Coast people. So we are going to collectively butcher the English language as we do. Maria speaks English better than I do because she's not as far east as I am, and she's also moved a little bit further west. So she's gotten some of her accent out of her speech. And
But I love
um,
my coffee, so don't.
that's and Ryan is on the West Coast at least for the last, I don't know, 10 years or so, Ryan. So at least you're now you've worked on your accent as well. So
I've tried, but I think you're gonna bring mine out worse. So,
and that's what happens, right?
It always happens.
I'm gonna trigger the Long Island accent, and what makes it even worse for folks. We should let them know is I grew up in the same community you grew up in, although 30 years before you were born,
Mhm.
so it was a long time ago. But I think Bayshore has a particular type of English that most people don't understand. So if we sound like we're speaking Spanish, folks, we're not. We're really just speaking Long Island English from Bayshore. So Ryan, now that we've helped folks understand why they'll struggle with our language, talk to us about what it was like to grow up in Bayshore and what kinds of goals and dreams did you have during your childhood in that really nice, in all seriousness, a really beautiful South Shore community on Long Island.
Yeah. Growing up, in Bayshore, yeah, I always wanted to do music since I was like a real little kid. So that was like my main uh focus for growing up. I was also really super into baseball. And I also am part of the LGBTQ community and came out very young as trans. So that's a big part of my context and my identity, which launched me into activism work super quick. So I was doing music and speaking at schools pretty much like full time by the time I was 13, which is also like a lot of stress. And I know a part of this disease is also like caused by some stress. So that's that. And I actually dealt with illness really young in my life. My mom was really sick growing up, the whole time, like growing up. And I also mysteriously lost my hearing in my left ear when I was 13. And it never came back, but I was super sick. I couldn't walk. I had to relearn how to walk and everything. And they never figured out what was that. So that kind of feels like a walk in the park compared to what's been going on more recently with my health. But that's a little bit about the context of where I'm from. And I left Long Island when I was 18 to move to California to try to be more free and be able to be less scared, basically.
So, all right. So, and I want to build all that out in a little bit more detail. But let's first talk a little bit about your artistic aptitude. So, you learned very early on that you were an artist and that you were a musical artist. So, talk to us about how you first came in touch with that aptitude and what type of musical pursuits were you participating in, and how was that filling up your cup during, the early stages of your life?
Yeah, my older brother tried to play guitar and failed at it, and guitar was just like sitting in the corner of our living room for years. And I would beg my parents, like, "Can I play it? Can I play it?" And they would just keep telling me I was too small until I was about 6 years old, and then they got me lessons. So guitar was like a super early passion, and then at age 12, I wrote my first song. My mom like came home from work and I played it on the piano, and she was like, "Whose song is that?" Um, she thought it was an Aerosmith song, and I was like, "I wrote that," and she's like, "No way." So yeah, it was something that came really naturally to me and still does. So yeah, it just happened really early on. I started getting involved with playing open mics and then started doing shows by the time I was 13. And I went on my first tour of the East Coast when I was 15, and I booked all that myself and did everything myself.
Well, that is really cool. So now talk to us about some of the stresses that you were dealing with. The first thing you shared with us was that your mom was really sick during your childhood. Talk to us, again, without violating any of the confidences that your mom wouldn't necessarily want you to share. But talk to us about how your mom's illness was affecting you and what kind of stresses that was causing in your life, or what kind of inspirations it was offering to you as an artist.
Yeah, well, my mom had Lyme disease in 1991 or 1992. It was like just before I was born in 1993. The Lyme disease brought out lupus in her. She got lupus, ulcerative colitis, and cancer like all right before I was born. Um, so yeah, my mom was like really struggling for, especially while I was in elementary school. It was basically like my mom would have very few good days where she had energy, and as a kid, I didn't really understand that at all. And it was a lot of like her calling us into her room, and she would be like bedridden and say like, "I have to go back to the hospital," and she would just wait for as long as she could. Like my mom is an extremely strong woman that like would be in like so much pain and like on the verge of dying, and then be like, "Oh, okay, I guess I should go to the hospital now." And she would just like show up for everything, like every single show that I ever played, like she would be there, regardless of how sick she was. And now looking back on it, I'm like, wow, that's really amazing. And a lot of my strength that I get is from her, and I know that, and I'm really thankful for it. But yeah, growing up as a kid, that was really hard on me and my brothers.
So let's talk about Lyme disease. So you grew up in the Lyme Belt, as both Maria and I did, and one of the things that Maria knows about me is that when I grew up in Bayshore, there were many ticks. Actually, my community was built on top of a former farm, and it was and there were woods that were all around our homes. And we were bitten by ticks all the time. I mean, we had what I call the janky tick kit in our um, near our side door. We had what was called a mud room, and we had a shelf there because before we can let our dogs in, we had to do tick checks on the dogs so they wouldn't be bringing ticks into the house, which is almost a daily thing. And quite frankly, we were constantly checked by, we had to check ourselves with ticks anytime we came in from outside, which is obviously every day, because we had ticks on us all the time. And we would put Vaseline on them, and which you don't do anymore, and we would pull them off and we would burn the ticks, not on us, but after we'd pull the ticks off us. And that was in the 60s and 70s, Ryan. Did you have a similar experience during your childhood in Bayshore, where, in part because your mom had been on a Lyme disease journey, or just in part because it's now sort of built into the culture of folks who are living in the community where you and I both grew up, that you were aware of ticks?
Yeah, I was aware of it, but like not so much, honestly. Like I remember one time my little brother got bit and we sent the tick in and he was totally fine. But like other than that, my mom would like be like, "Yeah, when I got Lyme disease from a dog rubbed a tick onto me," like, and that was like all that was ever really said. Um and yeah, so I didn't really know much about it, and it wasn't until actually in June I saw my mom and I asked her like, "Mom, like you said you had Lyme disease and then it brought
You're
out
saying this past
lupus."
June,
Yeah, this past June.
last month.
Like last month, yeah. And then I was like, "But did it ever come back?" And then she was like, "Yeah, 6 months later, the infectious disease treated me again." And my mom has like strange symptoms her whole life, so maybe she still has it, maybe not. But I was like, oh man, she definitely had it like while I was in the womb. So it kind of made a lot of things make more sense for me.
So, Ryan, you shared with us that during your childhood you had to manage a lot of illnesses. Can you talk to us about the kind of illnesses that you were dealing with? And as part of that, can you share with us whether or not any of the doctors who you were working with during your childhood illnesses suggested that you should be tested for Lyme disease?
Yeah, when I was doing like great health wise, and then I was like 2 months into being 13. I think I was in seventh grade or eighth grade. All of a sudden I went I heard a pop in my left ear, and it was late at night, and my hearing went out, and I like put my headphones on immediately and was like, "Whoa, this is really weird. Like I can't hear at all in my left ear." And I was like, "All right, I'll just go to bed and see if like in the morning maybe it'll just come back." And then like probably less than an hour later, I woke up and everything was spinning. The room was spinning. I was spinning. I was so nauseated. And my mom wouldn't really be able to come upstairs much because she was so sick. So I had a phone next to my bed and I called my mom and I said, "Oh, I'm so sick. I need you to come up here." She said, "No, you have to come down here." And I tried to like get up and I couldn't walk. And her boyfriend actually carried me downstairs, and like every movement I was just so sick, so I was just like vomiting everywhere. And this went on for 3 days where I was so weak I couldn't even lift my head. I couldn't walk at all. So I went. They brought me to the hospital. I think I was in there for like a week or something. I don't remember, but um, I still couldn't walk. They tested me for a bunch of stuff. I don't think they ever tested me for any tick-borne illnesses. Um, so yeah, they didn't like test me like fully for anything, and nothing really got resolved. I had like the worst headache that I've ever had in my life. And I went home and my mom was like, they told the doctors told my parents like, he'll probably never walk again. And my mom was just like, nah, like you're gonna walk. And my mom she would start me crawling and I would just fall over because I was so off balance. And every day she just helped me like figure out like my new center of balance. And in about a month I was walking again and my head was like stuck to one side, but for a while, but I was walking and I felt really like that young. I was like, okay, wow, like life is such a gift. Like I thought I would never walk again, and here I am, I could walk again at 13, and then I was like skateboarding and stuff. So I felt really, really blessed.
So, were you given a diagnosis for this series of illnesses that were crippled you for at least a month. I mean, what was the diagnosis?
They didn't give me any diagnosis ever. It was like my family just be like the mysterious illness that got Ryan. Like it was like it was weird, and I never regained my hearing or anything. Like it's been gone, which obviously has affected me as a musician and everything. But yeah, they never figured it out, and I've researched, looked it up. Like nothing matches what it was.
All right, we've had many guests share with us that they lost their hearing as a result of Lyme disease. So
Mm,
I don't think that's uncommon. And early on in our work on Instagram, there were some folks that called us out because we weren't captioning our videos. We've since changed that, and we're proud to say that we are captioning our videos so that the hearing impaired community can also participate in our platforms. But it is not uncommon for folks who have Lyme disease to lose their hearing. So again, not that I'm a doctor, but my guess is that's probably what you were dealing with. Now, well, I guess what's making me a little bit anxious about your story, quite frankly, is your mom had Lyme disease and she was very, very sick for a long time. You now have what they're describing as mystery illness. They test you, but they never make a connection between you living in a sick endemic community. There's a ton of Lyme disease where you grew up, where I grew up, and where I still live. And there's just no thought that that you have Lyme disease at that stage.
yeah.
I have a similar situation. My mom has rheumatoid arthritis, um, and grew up in New Jersey, and just no one even thought. I mean, out of all the illnesses that it can masquerade as, it's like rheumatoid arthritis is clearly the one that people accept and like are like, yeah, like that's the one. And so same thing. It was just brushed right over, and I
Yeah,
can really.
it really is. I mean, look, it's just wild that all three of us have grown up in sick endemic communities. The two of you had very, very typical Lyme disease symptoms. Everyone in the community would diagnose you very easily, and that's why we call this a supermarket diagnosis disease. It's easier to get diagnosed in the supermarket than it is at a doctor's office. Yet your medical professionals either weren't well trained enough or educated enough to observe the symptoms, or they were afraid to diagnose you with Lyme disease and didn't diagnose you with Lyme disease. But for whatever reason, there were many years of suffering for both of you that could have been shortcut had
Mhm.
somebody either had the capacity to diagnose you or had the courage to diagnose you.
Yeah, definitely.
So now talk to us about you talked a little bit more about some of the activism in your life during your childhood, and you implied that there were some stresses associated with your activism. So talk to us about your experience as a trans youth and what triggered you to activism and how either there were social stresses before you came out, there were stresses when you did come out, were there stresses as a result of your activism, or all the above?
Yeah, I mean, really all of them. Like, I by age 13, I was getting bullied really bad in school. I reached out to the counselors and stuff at school, and they brought me to the LGBT center. And from there, I joined a team called the Safe Schools team, and they educated us about how to talk to other students and teachers. And we would go into a bunch of different schools and speak to them and educate them so that there wouldn't be as much bullying in these school districts on Long Island. So I was doing that, and by the time I was 14, I came out as trans. I realized like that's who I am, and now this is a time where like the word trans was like not even like people weren't saying it. Transgender was like no one heard of it, like it wasn't a popular thing at all whatsoever. So it was extremely isolating, and I didn't know any other uh like kids my age at all or close to it that were trans. And at 15, after doing like some speeches and stuff, I got called to go on the Larry King live show, and I went on that show, which now I was out to everyone that like did not know, including like my extended family and everybody at school. So a lot of problems came from that because of discrimination, and my school was like not great about it, honestly, for a while. And it was like every day was a fight with like a petition and like walking out of classes and doing all of these like things that like a normal 15-year-old just like isn't having to do, you know? So that was it was very difficult for that. And I experienced a lot of violence and physical and sexual violence because of being visible and just being myself. So it was a rough upbringing, I guess. But it's just, you know, it was my truth, and I know that I just had to be myself, so that's what I did.
So, Ryan, one of the things we know on this podcast and our followers understand is that stress is immunosuppressive, right? And one of the things that that I always feel anxious about as I'm guiding someone through their story is I can often see the train coming down the tracks, right? You can see the light
Hmm.
coming, and you're painting this very vivid picture of a mother who had Lyme disease and was chronically ill during your childhood, but not clearly connecting her chronic illness to that experience that she had with Lyme disease before you were born. And Lyme disease had just recently been, and I'm using air quotes, discovered before your mom was diagnosed. So she may have been one of the earliest
Hmm.
diagnoses. Um, and you have so you have this overlay of illness, chronically ill mother in your house. We have you suffering from illness. Your own physical illness that doesn't get properly diagnosed, your hearing loss, and then you have your activism and some of the challenges that you're dealing with people not understanding who you are and not accepting you for who you are. So we have this very, very stressful environment. And on top of that, you're growing up with a bunch of ticks around you, biting you all the time, maybe not even having the tools to keep yourself from not only being bitten, but from discovering them and removing them, right? So, we all see this train coming down the tracks, and Ryan's getting run over by the Lyme train. So talk to us
Yeah.
about how your health betrayed you between this period of time when you're 15 and 16 and before you move out to San Francisco.
Yeah, so I think the first, like, after going deaf in one ear and going through all of that, the first like weird symptoms that I had health wise was all of a sudden, like, it just happened instantly. Most of the saliva in my mouth disappeared. And so now constantly, like, I'm like, okay, I have to like always carry water with me and make sure I have water like during school and stuff, like always on me, like, because I can't even like speak if my mouth starts getting like super dry, which is like always very dry. But so that goes on for like 5 years and still going on now. But when I was 20 in San Francisco, they tested me for Sjogren's syndrome, which is an autoimmune illness, and I got diagnosed with that. And then for the years following that, for a couple years following that, like, I am having like weird symptoms. One of them is I am noticing every time I eat gluten, I can't walk. Like, my legs just stop working because it's so painful. So I think I was 24. I completely cut out gluten. And anytime I accidentally get glutened by something, like, I cannot walk. I'm in like serious pain. It's terrible. So I avoid it. I really avoid it. So that was like the other weird symptom. And then like starting I had migraines like my whole life that were debilitating, but like starting 2 years ago, I started getting them like every week, and then all of a sudden it was like three, four, five a week, like serious pain. And Then, am I jumping ahead too quickly?
No, no, you're perfect.
Okay.
Keep going.
So then, October of 2022, yeah. Um, I all of a sudden I'm having this like severe pain in my foot, in my toe, in my big toe, and it's like excruciating pain. Like it would wake me up. I was limping. They tried all different things, cortisone shots, all these things. I had like muscle atrophy. And then my left toe like just went paralyzed. And they still were just like all my doctors were kind of just like, that's weird, like, but we don't know. We don't know what's happening. Um, so I go on like this. They keep testing me for stuff, and um, my friend Crystal, who I connected with because she wrote a piece. She's a writer, and she wrote a piece about me for the the Grammys, and she writes a piece for the website about me. And so we're talking a lot. We become friends, and we're sharing our health stories with each other. And she's like, dude, I think you have Lyme disease. Like, if I had to bet, like, I think that's what you have. And, like, you need to get tested. So now I spend, like, an entire year, every time I go to the doctor, asking doctors, like, can you please test me? And they're just like, no, you don't have that. No, no. And so I'm just like, okay, I guess not. So I, like, give up on it. And then Crystal just keeps coming back in like, no, like I really think you have this. And she was like really persistent. And eventually I was like, I really like need to get tested because things are getting like more and more weird. I have this like last year I had like a really incredible first half of my year. I get signed to a record label. I go on tour with my band. We have a record come out for a record store day. I get invited to go to the White House and talk to them. And then I get married, and like everything was like absolutely amazing. Like I was like, my life is perfect. Besides for my paralyzed toe and my headaches. Which at that point I was like, now looking back, I'm like, wow, I wish that was all I had to complain about was those two like health things. So right before I got married, within like 30 days, my pastor died unexpectedly. Then my grandfather dies, and then a week later my dog died, and he was like my absolute like heart. So it was an extremely rough time for me, and I kind of checked the grief because I was getting married in 29 days, and ended up having like a super beautiful wedding. But
Congratulations
then
on your wedding.
what's up?
Well,
Congratulations.
congratulations.
Oh, thank you. So then we go on our honeymoon, go to Italy. I feel the best health that I've felt like in the past decade. I feel great. I'm like walking around, I'm eating all types of food with like no reactions. I'm just like blissed out maybe. Just having a great time. The week after we get back from our honeymoon, my neck starts hurting, like severe pain. I can't turn my neck. It hurts like super bad. I'm telling all my friends like, oh man, I can't even like, turn my head to look at you. I'm sorry, my neck hurts. And they're like, oh, it's just because you're 30 now. Like, it's just part of like getting older. It'll go away in a couple days. Couple days pass. No, no,
You're
it's
so
like
old,
getting
Ryan.
worse.
You're 30. That's old.
Yeah. And then like
That's
I'm
30.
like, this will go away in like 2 weeks. It has to go away. And then like weeks pass, and I'm like, this is October now, so this is a year after this thing happens with my foot. Um, and I'm like, just like it's gonna go away before my birthday. It's gonna go away before New Year's Eve. Like telling myself like this can't keep going on. But November, I'm like now extremely sick. Where I'm nauseous all of the time. Like all of my joints hurt, like my bones hurt, all my muscles hurt, neck pain, eye pain. Can't look at bright lights, can't be around any like smells. Like everything was like triggering me to have headaches and more pain. Could barely like tolerate any food. Um, and then I went to a rheumatologist. They said like your Sjogren's is getting like super bad, super out of control. Put me on hydroxychloroquine to try to control it, and I'm just getting like more and more sick. Finally, I go down to Crystal, one of Crystal's doctors that is a rheumatologist and an infectious disease doctor that specializes in tick-borne illnesses. And he runs a panel, and I finally get the IGNX panel too. And now what's like extremely weird about all this is I get 2 Lyme bands, indeterminate, 1 positive, and then I'm positive for Bartonella, Babesia, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, mycoplasma, and my mycoplasma is like extremely high, and they still haven't figured out how to make it go down. So some doctors are like, I don't like, I've seen so many doctors now, but like over a dozen probably since October, and some of them are just like, no, you don't have Lyme. And then other ones are like, I don't even know if you have these tick-borne illnesses at all. And then they would test me like on different types of tests, like LabCorp, Quest, Primex, all these different ones, and like different things would show up on each of them. So yeah, it's been kind of, that part's been like really confusing for me. So I usually just say Lyme co-infections because I definitely have 4 of the co-infections.
So, Ryan, Maria's going to take you through the next piece of your journey, but I do want to talk to you about something that's really important to us here at Tick Boot Camp. We think one of the biggest challenges with Lyme disease, or we've come to conclude that one of the biggest challenges with Lyme disease is that it's a disease without a definition, at least without a consistent definition, right? And one of the challenges, of course, we have is that when Lyme was originally discovered, and I'm going to say original again in air quotes without putting up the air quotes, and let's keep the bioweapon element to the side for now. We can bookmark it if we want to revisit that, because my friend Maria Mooney is the first person that put that on my radar and had me read Bitten and inspired us to interview Chris Newby. So thank you again, Maria, for that.
Or I'm always out here to, give it to the government.
So we'll bookmark that now, and we'll just talk about one of our favorite topics here in Tick Boot Camp, which is what is the definition of Lyme disease, right? Is it a disease caused by a single bacteria, single strain of a single bacteria, or is it something else? Should we divorce from the term Lyme disease, which is what Dr. Alan McDonald argues we should be doing, or should we just have a more empowering definition of Lyme disease? So we here at Tick Boot Camp have again interviewed hundreds of doctors and thousands of patients, and we've come to the conclusion that we shouldn't divorce from Lyme disease, and we've argued this before because there's been a whole culture built around this word. So we should stay with the word, but we should properly define it. And I think part of the reason why you're struggling, Ryan, and so part of the reason why so many of your doctors have struggled is because they were looking for one strain of one bacteria, when in fact Lyme disease, in our view, is a polymicrobial, multisystemic, chronic, infectious and or post-infectious disease. And when you capture the essence of this disease, you fit into, in my view, a classic definition of this disease. And rather than engaging in a debate about whether or not you have Lyme or don't have Lyme, because it is defined in some circles as one strain of one bacteria, when you actually bring the whole spectrum, to the definition, the way we argue you should, you have a very classic definition of Lyme disease, both systemically and from the standpoint of the tests that you've taken. And I hope that is validating to you, because we think a
Yeah,
lot of people are invalidated because of the improper definition of this disease.
definitely.
So tell
Thank
me what
you.
you think about our definition of a polymicrobial, multisystemic, chronic infectious and or post-infectious disease.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that. I mean, yeah, I have like so many of the co-infections, and when I go on that group on Facebook a lot, it has like 50,000 people in it. But when like that's the only place where like I share what is happening to me, all these weird things that everybody else, even my like doctors, are like, what WTF? And that group is like that I post one thing and then like dozens of people are like, I have that too, I have that too, I have that too. And I'm like, okay, like one, I'm not alone in what I'm going through, even though it feels like super weird and isolating. But two, like I identify so much with what everyone else is experiencing in that group, and that groups has been very validating for me. So like yeah, I definitely agree with that definition. And I think like so there's some people that in that group have been like, well, what do you test positive for? Like there's like this gatekeeping thing that some people do. And it's like some people only test positive for Lyme, and then some people test positive for like one of the co-infections. Like what actually qualifies you, you know? I think just having one co-infection would qualify anyone, and I do feel like the term Lyme disease could be more of a blanket term for to cover any of those co-infections.
Yeah, and our definition does cover that. So
Yep.
if you're asking me, based on the tick boot camp definition, what do you have to have? You just have to have one of those tick diseases, and you have Lyme disease. And it doesn't have to just be Borrelia, and it doesn't have to be Borrelia burgdorferi. It can be any of those tick diseases. But let me let Maria explore your diagnostic journey with you in more detail, because it is actually a pretty cool journey.
Sure. So I want to say first, I have a similar experience with Lyme. Always coming up with two positive bands, one like, undetermined, and one a more obvious band. And as I started to get treated for Lyme, about 5-6 years in, we retested and I came up with more positive bands. So a lot of the times that will happen in treatment. And my specialists say that if you do have one positive band that is a Lyme band, you were most likely exposed because that's an antibody that is kind of coming out. So I can totally relate to that and the frustrations of that. Also giving some hope that there are times where when you start to treat it and you break up that biofilm, then it will kind of come up in the testing and even in the regular testing, which wasn't working like for us before. So always something to consider. And I love talking to other people because I feel like our experiences are so similar. We can give each other, some other avenues to look into, or some just calm the anxiety a little bit to know like, okay, like this is real. And I can not only can I treat this and get better from it, but other people are out there who are doing it too. And so now I have something that I can compare myself to. So I think that was always a very difficult part. But to continue on with your story, you said you saw multiple doctors before, right? You said,
Yeah.
and how many? Up to 12 or 6 or 12?
Yeah, I think so. Like I've been to so many different rheumatologists too. different primary care doctors, like just, trying to get any diagnosis that made sense. So many neurologists, like, I did so much testing.
Very common. I feel like Rich can attest to that, the number of doctors that we wind up seeing in a small period of time. So how has your treatment gone? So now you've got your diagnosis for Babesia. How then did you begin to treat it? And, are you still treating it now? What are you doing to treat it?
Yeah, so at first, like after I got my test results, I thought I only had Babesia, until I went back to the infectious disease doctor, and he was like, "This is also positive Bartonella, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and mycoplasma." I started with herbal medicine, and I still take like a lot of herbs, like a lot. It takes like a long time every week to fill up the pill container, which is like that's the part of the week I hate the most because I'm like, well, another week has passed and I
It's quick.
feel the same.
Yes. And it goes by very quick and you're like, again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then in February they started me on doxycycline 2 times a day. Um and I mean, yeah, like the only person that has said like I've gotten any better is my mom. She's just like, "Oh, I hear it in your voice, you're getting better." And I don't know if she's just like telling me that to like cheer me on. But
Moms, moms know every little inflection of your voice and if it sounds strong or not.
yeah, but for the most part, like I mean, I haven't gotten worse, but I haven't gotten better. And I feel like I've tried so many things. Um, there are times where I'm just like, yo, I cannot do this anymore. Like, I am sick of it. And it bums me out a lot. Like, it makes me feel depressed or stressed, and like people invite me to do all these cool things, and then I'm like, I never know if I'm gonna be able to go to anything or not. Like,
Very
if I'm gonna be able to show up, because things change so quickly. Like, sometimes I feel fine for like an hour, and I'm like, oh my God, maybe I'm getting healed. Like, this is it. And then like an hour later, I'm just like, can't even move, like, nauseous on the bathroom floor, like, and then I'm like, oh, great, shouldn't have said that. I felt like I was getting better.
yeah.
So it's really a lot of ups and downs. And I've been doing a lot of experimental treatments, I would say, probably.
So what are some of the well, actually, let me back up for a second because I want to talk quickly about die-off. So when you're taking your different treatments, are you feeling a lot of die-off? Because I know in our community, that can be one of the most difficult things about treating these infections is oftentimes you have to feel worse before you feel better. And that is very, very frightening and can bring up a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress, like you're saying. So when you started taking
Hmm.
these treatments, did you notice that you felt sicker at times? And if you did, were you aware that it was die-off, and were your doctors kind of letting you know that this was part of the process?
Yeah, I I I didn't really know about die-off or herxing when I first started. What's really crazy part of my story is two years ago I was supposed to perform at this festival, and as soon as I got there, I got stung by a bee right above my heart, which really freaked me out. Like, I thought someone shot me or something because it hurt so bad and it was so unexpected. And it happened within like 3 minutes of being there. Um, and the EMS worker that like saved me, had Lyme disease, and what after took me in the ambulance and everything to the hospital, followed me on Instagram, and I didn't know that she had stayed connected to me. And when I posted online, like I just got diagnosed with all these co-infections, she reached out to me and offered to call me, which I felt like, oh my God, she was an angel for saving me at the bee, and now she's like back being an angel in my life. And she's who told me about Herx and how do I go through this, because it is really intense, and it does make me feel worse. And like when I started antibiotics, I felt worse, and I often feel worse, especially when I start new medications. Like I have parasites too, and they put me on Alenia, which is really intense. Um, and that was really bad herxing from that too. Um, but yeah, she's told me all these tips to get me through it, the herxing. One of the best ones has been taking Epsom salt baths. And I also found that putting a mustard seed in it actually helps make my body feel better, but you can only do that for like 10 minutes. I did it for an hour once and I felt like a jalapeno basically. So yeah, only do that for like 10 minutes if you try it. But the Epsom salts baths has helped a lot, and I do ozone therapy. That's helped me a lot with energy. Like I had ozone yesterday, so I do have a little more energy than I usually do because of that, and glutathione as well.
Yes, that's a really amazing one in my life is the glutathione. And I love to talk to other, I'm going to say patients. I will say other warriors, because it's really fascinating to hear what works for each person. A lot of times it's different, and depending on the infections, the treatment, the person itself, your own body composition, your history. There's so much that can factor into it. So I love like the tips that you're giving, the Epsom salt bath. That's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
So you said you tried ozone therapy as well. You're on anti-parasitics. You're on an anti-malarial for the Babesia as well. Is there
Mm-hmm.
anything else that you're doing? Because I know it gets very difficult where you sort of have to pick and choose how much you're doing at one time, because that
Yeah.
diet can be so heavy. So are you doing all of these at once, or are these things that you're sort of cycling to be able to handle what they bring?
Yeah, they have me cycling, so I do a week of Alinea. Well, I'm on Alinea, I'm not on the Doxy, so that the herxing isn't as bad. I the cycling I do notice helps because like at first when I stayed on doxycycline for 2 months without like taking even a day of a break. And then one of my doctors was like, you have to take like 5 days off because you're just herxing so bad I could like barely move. So then, yeah, I've noticed like now I can kind of tell like in my body, like, oh, I should probably just take a couple days off right now. But I'm also like, I don't want to do it too often because I don't want it to like backtrack at all.
This is the push and pull. I feel a lot of people listening to this will really relate, because I
Mhm.
know for myself, I could be a bit of a perfectionist. So when I would see something on my treatment paper, I wanted to follow it exactly as it was, and it would
Yeah.
put me in kind of worse position in the long haul. So I think for people to hear this, it gives you that like sigh of relief, like, okay, like I don't have to push this 24/7 all the time. It's a marathon, not a sprint, unfortunately. And like you're saying, a lot of it does come with pulling back sometimes and taking some time off. So I think that's something that's a really, really good point to bring up. And for anyone listening to hear, it's just a difficult treatment. And at times we have to sort of sit back and be kind to ourselves and say, okay, like I got to make this through the long haul.
Yeah. That I've had to learn that because I did really want to go super fast in the beginning and just get it over with. Like I'll go through hell for 6 months and just get me out of this. And my mental health was getting worse and worse. And I realized like, okay, like slower might be better for at least right now, because I want to still like play a show every once in a while. Like I can't tour anymore, but like every once in a while I should be able to play a show and like do something that is good for my mental health, or go out and hang out with my friends. And like it's important to still have somewhat of a life, even though I feel like I don't really have much of a life. Like I see my doctors way more than I see my friends. I'm 5 days a week in the doctors, basically, 2, 3 appointments a day, just doing all of these things to try and get better. So every once in a while, it's important. And currently, right now, like I actually just stopped Doxy yesterday. And I stopped taking hydroxychloroquine because I'm getting like a toxic skin reaction where my skin is like turning blue. And that's because of it has a really bad reaction with the sun. So I'm off of that right now, and in like 2 weeks from now, I'm going to the beach, even if I feel like crap, because I haven't been in the sun in this whole year, not, not at all. And like I need to go in the sun like one time this summer to like have some sense of normalcy. But yeah, Monday I start IV antibiotics, so I am going to be giving that a try.
So I know it's still early in your treatment, but would you be able to maybe identify something that, or more than one thing that you think is really helping? I know you mentioned ozone kind of gives you a little energy. I know it's hard to
Mm-hmm.
tell, in the beginning because you're sort of getting used to this whole process.
Yeah. I have tricks that definitely have helped me a lot. The thing that has provided me with the most relief is literally Tiger Balm. And I have gone through like 20 of these probably since October.
I'm like,
Um
because I learn all the time.
cuz the neck pain is so bad, like it keeps me awake at night. So I put on so much of this Tiger Balm Ultra Strength one. Um and it helps. One of my worst symptoms that I have is hypertonic muscles, and it's extremely painful. I spent like two months with my hands completely stuck like this, really painful. So
Well,
the Tiger Balm soothes the pain enough so that I could think of something else besides the pain. And along with that, heat helps a lot, like heat patches. Um, and I also feel ice helps a lot as well. So those three things I do 24/7
perfect.
since October. And this like Tiger Balm, that's how I'm able to play a show, because the weight of my guitar is like so much. Plus adrenaline really helps. It goes a long way too. But um that's one of my biggest things. I do ozone 1 to 2 times a week. I do a 4 pass. I've done more than that, and then I realized like too much die off. Cause I do UV light too. Um, to try to kill some Babesia, but ozone helps actually. I get like 1 to 4 hours of no neck pain after I do it. So which feels just really relief, even though it's a really short amount of time.
I do
Um,
as well, and I get the same thing, probably a couple hours of relief
yeah.
afterward, and it really makes you feel like, wow, this is possible, for my future. So I'm glad that you mentioned ozone, because I think
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know ozone's like kind of experimental still. The other thing that I do that is really rare is Nuka chiropractor.
oh, is it
Uh,
understandable
it's
that
Nuka.
is it at the top here that you get?
Yeah. There's
Yeah.
no crack. He doesn't crack my neck. He moves things, and when I got an X-ray of my neck, my C spine is straight. There's no curve at all in my neck. Um, So they've been working on it. It did give me a little bit of relief at first, but lately I haven't noticed. And now they have me in physical therapy 2 times a week because my hand is doesn't work properly. It's hard to grip things. Pinching is anything is really hard. The weight I can't stand of carrying anything, even really light things. It's like very painful. So they've been working on that and to try to relax the hypertonic muscles. So those are things that I'm doing. And then I also try to reduce EMF, which I know is like a weird one too, that people are like, what is this? Shut
But
your internet off and your phone off.
I wish to go out in the woods and just stay there, but also
Yeah.
I don't have ticks in my life at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up the upper cervical because I also do that. And when I go into my doctor and he does my adjustment, just taps it over there, I will feel this huge release. A lot of my infection, is neurological, so brain, spinal cord, heart, things like that. And I coined the term in their office just for fun. I call it a brain drain. So I go in there. So essentially, for anyone who's listening, if your top of your spine or your atlas is off, it's the part of our spine that allows us to rotate our head like this. If that's off at all, it can actually block the blood flow to the brain, which is also the detox pathway out of your brain. So if you're doing a lot of treatment and you have infection in your brain, and that is tilted and blocking, it's very difficult for that to drain. And so you have worse brain fog, agitation, anxiety, all the things, frustration, get mad. I mean, my personality would just completely change. And so I'm really happy that you brought that up because I think that is a really great tool for some of us who are dealing with either neck pain in general or have those infections in the brain and are dealing with a lot of brain fog, knowing that there is a way to sort of, for me, it's part of my treatment process where I know every 3 weeks I go and get that done. I can drain this brain a little bit. I get a little, more clarity. So I'm really happy that is helping you. Also that you brought it up for the listeners.
Yeah.
So the next question I want to ask is, I know you're so early into your treatment, although it probably doesn't feel early at all. You've probably been feeling like you've been doing this for years, months turn into years on this treatment. But if you had to quantify it, and I know it's really hard, we talked about that a little bit earlier before we started the podcast, what percentage would you say that you've improved to this point today?
Yeah, I mean it's hard to say like, but I would probably say like somewhere between like 0 and 10% to be generous. 'Cause some days it just doesn't feel like there's been any improvement, and then maybe there's like tiny bits of improvement. I think in the last couple of months I've noticed I don't have as much brain fog. So that's been like at least good.
It's really
And yeah, but like pain wise, like my pain has gotten worse. And I don't know if that's because of Herc's reaction and die off, or is it like other things are just getting worse? I don't know.
if
And
I had
they,
guess, I would say it would be her sort of die off for me. All my pain, like all my pain, but like
yeah,
stocking glove neuropathy kind of thing going on, and some other aches and pains. And when I'm taking treatment and when I'm really like hard on it, and there's days that I don't really take off, the pain for me just skyrockets, and I would think like, oh, I'm getting worse even 10 years later, and then I kind of back off or something like that, or the die-off subsides a bit, and I kind of go back to that baseline. So if I had to
yeah.
give advice, I would say possibly cursing and to keep the
Yeah, and I do have the autoimmune illness component to complicate things as well, which is also like they don't. I have like an autoimmune illness that like doesn't have much research, Sjogren's syndrome, and basically no one's even heard of it. Most doctors I go to haven't heard about it or don't know much about it either. So that's also another like kind of mysterious component to it for me.
And I know, Richa, we talked about this before, but Lyme, for the listeners, can masquerade as about 300 or so illnesses, many of them neurological, many of them autoimmune. And so I feel like that's just a really good kind of point to throw out there for anyone who's listening, who is dealing with something like arthritis or lupus, something like I had, RSD or MS. A lot of the time, these could be like pathogen based, and our immune systems are very smart and they're doing what they're supposed to do. They're going in and they're attacking these pathogens, which just happen to be like in our tissues versus in our bloodstream. So just always kind of a good tidbit to throw out there, just in case people who have certain illnesses and they just feel like they're never going to get better and they have to live like that forever. That there is a chance, and there are really great professionals out there. But thank you for sharing, the things that you're going through, because I think it'll help so many people.
Yeah, and I did get diagnosed by so many different doctors with fibromyalgia. Like basically when they gave up and then they diagnosed me with that, and I was just like, no, like something else is going on. Like I know it. And part of it's like you just gotta trust that like your gut feeling is right and keep searching for the answer and don't stop there. Like if I would have stopped at like fibromyalgia diagnosis, like I would just be getting like super sick and continuously.
I agree. Same thing. Many diagnoses over here, and
Mm-hmm.
happy to be treating something that is treatable. That always makes me happy. Um, so you said when you were quantifying it, you said sometimes 0, maybe 10 on certain days, and I'm sure, as we were talking about before, it can be like in one day you could feel 0, and then a few hours later you could feel like you made 10% improvement. It's just
Mm-hmm.
fluctuation, excuse me. But in terms of like your work life and your social life, are you able to work at all right now, or is it more treatment mode and this is time for you to focus on health?
Yeah, I mean, I've been working like very little, and it's like as much as I can do. I run a music blog, so luckily that's from home. But there's been like,
Right?
what'd you say?
What's that called? We should plug it, right?
Oh, it's called Rock the Pigeon.
All right.
So I review like indie artists mostly. So that's like my main source of income. Luckily that's in from home, but there's been like weeks in a row where I cannot type and job requires a lot of typing. So there's been a lot of times where I've just had to put it on hiatus or ask other people to write some stuff for me as well. So there's been that. And then as far as like music stuff goes, I've been very slow to record. Like by now I would have already recorded like 2 albums probably, 2 more albums, but like I've only recorded a few songs in the past like year and a half. And I my label has been like amazing at just being great and chill about deadlines and stuff, so that's been good. So I'm not really like pressured to rush, which is good. And then I play like 1 or 2 shows a month. Um, and before this, there was times where I was doing like 20 shows in a month or more. So I'm extremely slowed down. I can't really do shows in a row like I used to like to do a tour. I played a show on Sunday, 30 minutes, really short show, and like I've been pretty dead since, and like tomorrow's Saturday, so that's like kind of
A
how
week
it goes.
recovery when you do it.
Yeah.
It's
But
not.
it's worth it to be around people, have the energy and the adrenaline and have fun. And just when I'm on stage, I the first like 2 songs feel painful because I everything is hurting. But when the adrenaline takes over, I just get like a break for a second from dealing with all this health stuff because it has really consumed my life. Like I think about it all of the time. I'm constantly like Googling things to try to like figure out like is there a shortcut? Like how could I just like get through this quicker? Like, what could actually help me? So there's like that sense of urgency.
Yeah, I can very much relate to that. I think even down 10 years later, I'm still always Googling just to see,
Yeah.
am I on the right track with the things we're doing now? So very relatable. I feel like everyone listening isn't going to be able to relate to that. So when we're talking about work and the limitations that you have currently while you're in treatment, how your life kind of revolves around treatment, how would you say your life has changed? We talked a little bit about it. Obviously, there's some negative things like not being able to do as much, obviously being in pain, not feeling well, not being able to follow some of the passions that probably really lights you up inside. But also, how has your life changed? I know this sounds wild talking about Lyme and co-infections, but in a positive way. Do you see the gifts that come from it? And if you do, what are those in your life?
Yeah, so it's funny because last night I was talking to my husband and I was just like, here's all the lessons I learned and I'll share them. But here's the lessons I've learned. Okay, God, like take this Lyme disease away because I learned all the lessons. Like what else, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to show me? Like what else is there?
Gosh, I feel
Um,
like I'm listening to myself, maybe like a week ago. It's like
yeah.
the way we can relate to one another in this community is really wild. But
Yeah, and that is helpful. So I think one of the things that I learned like early on is I realized like the stress component and also just having like this extreme amount of fatigue and just being like, I actually don't have energy for this, or you. Um, and that's actually, I still have work to do, but it's helped me to set boundaries. Um, where like sometimes I just don't answer my phone anymore. Like I'll have like 90 unread text messages and just be like that's fine. Like I need to take care of myself, and if it hurts me to type on my phone, like I'm not going to type. Like, someone could call me and then there's certain like people that were stressing me out and I was just like just not going to answer. Like if you stress me out, I cannot be your friend right now. I can't be part of like whatever toxicity you have going on because like I feel like I will like literally die like if I interact with too many people that are mentally unhealthy or just pulling energy from me or just like prying or doing whatever. Like I actually don't have the capacity, and I've had to learn like what do I have the capacity for, what is worth it to me, and what's healthy for me. And if I don't have capacity for it, I just don't do it. And the difference is before I would feel bad about that. I'd be like, well, I haven't answered so and so in 2 weeks, and now I'm just like, no, I don't need to feel bad because this is like life or death for me. Like, so that's how I feel. So that's boundaries have shifted a lot. Also, like what matters and what's important in life has shifted for me a lot. Before this, I would say I was like pretty materialistic, um, even with my ideas. And since being sick, like none of that stuff matters like at all. Like if it makes you have fun for a little bit or something, cool, but like that type of stuff actually just doesn't matter. Like having like status in society or having like cool things that make you look rich or something, like none of this stuff actually matters at all. And like this has brought made me feel closer to my family than I've ever felt.
Love that.
Um, it's made me feel like it's made me question everyone around me too. Like who are the real ones here? Like my real friends, my real family, and like bring those people closer. Like, who are the people that make me feel good? Bring those people closer. So I've had a deeper appreciation for community, for friendship, for family, for my husband, for our dogs. Just like things like that matter to me more than anything. And like if anything threatens those things, it's not worth it. It's just really not worth it. It doesn't matter like how big the opportunity is or whatever. Like I'm gonna show up for the people I love more than I ever have. So that has shifted for me really quite a bit, which has actually made me feel like I aged more in maturity, like in the past like year than I have in like years before that. So that's shifted a lot. Um,
These are this blessing, this, if you can call them the blessings of Lyme or of chronic illness. You know, I hear you talking about priorities and talking
mhm.
about protecting your peace, and you're talking about nurturing relationships. And what matters most are those small moments in life, like with your dog and with your husband and with your family.
Yeah.
And those lessons sometimes aren't learned until much later in life, and many people never learn them. And
Yeah.
I just want to say how proud I am of you for like
Thank you.
looking at your life in that way and saying like I need to prioritize what matters and protect my peace. And I think moving forward that's going to help you so much in your healing journey and just in your life in general.
Yeah.
All of the
Thank
things
you.
to learn.
And
Oh,
it and those I've also been on low histamine diet now for like 3 months. And I've introduced some foods back in, but that has also changed me because I met with the dietitian 2 times, and just from 2 sessions, like 2 hours, I learned so much about nutrition that I had all these assumptions before. I thought I was eating healthy before, and I was eating way healthier than like a lot of my friends, but I wasn't eating healthy.
mhm.
And now I realize like, whoa, this is healthy, this is not, and that's also shifted. And like that's actually has changed me a lot. And now knowing what I know about like nutrition and food, like I cannot go back. Like I just can't go back.
True. And so there's this it's like deeper appreciation for life and just for anything when you have Lyme and you're faced with, like you said, life or death. It,
Hmm.
it will change you. It will absolutely change you. So you've been through so much in your life, and in this time when you've been diagnosed as well, I feel like you have so much incredible advice. What advice would you give to someone who is dealing with Lyme disease, either in treatment or thinks they might have Lyme? Is there any piece of information that you sort of wish that you had known beforehand that you would be able to give other people to kind of help them along, like in their journey?
Yeah, I think trusting your intuition is one of the most important things. Like doctors, they know a lot, but they don't know everything, and they don't know everything about every topic, and they certainly don't know much about Lyme disease and Lyme co-infections. So find a Lyme literate doctor that has good reviews and that really listens to you and that makes you feel like you are respected, because that's who's going to be one of your biggest advocates. But overall, that like your biggest advocate is going to be yourself, like, and that's how it's been for me, because it has been a fight to be heard and to be respected by doctors as well. And I think that that's probably a lot of people's experience, because they're like, oh, chronic Lyme, that doesn't exist. But it definitely exists. Don't doubt yourself. Um, Tune into how you're feeling, rest when you need to, but also like do things that bring you joy. Like people have told me don't work or don't play shows. You shouldn't be doing any shows. It's like you have to do what you got to do to also keep your mental health healthy and keep your happiness, because this disease will take everything from you if you don't, and it will take your mental health if you don't protect that as much as your physical health.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's such great advice. Like the mental health portion of it, I think is not talked about enough at times. And for me, has been through my treatment and through the illness before a big struggle to stay positive. And again, dealing sometimes with, I like to be very honest about it when I'm talking about it, suicidal ideation, sometimes that I couldn't even control. And that was unexpected. I didn't know that it was going to affect my mind the way that it did. I thought I was such a strong person and I got this. And there are some things that, including inflammation in your brain, that you can't really control, and it will affect your mental health. So
Yeah.
I think it's so brave of you to also talk about mental health because it's so important and it's so connected to our physical health and to our healing. And in this situation of, like you said, life and death, something like um, poor mental health can really affect your healing and the illness and the process of the illness in terms of if you're in poor mental health, making it worse and making it worse very quickly. And if you're in good mental health, really being able to push you through like some of those dark times. So,
Yeah. And there is a big mind body connection, and I did start doing therapy 2 times a week. I was doing it 1 time a week before. Now I do it 2 times a week. And a lot of times like my session is like I didn't even say anything yet, but I'm just like I have to cry for like the first 10 minutes, just because like it is a lot of grief and it's so much to hold, like having this illness, like it's so much. And it's like to have that place, that safe place where I can just let it out and cry and be heard and be validated in my experience, like it's very important for me. So don't underestimate the power of therapy and mental health resources as well.
I'm so proud of you for engaging in therapy as well because I I have and I do, and a lot of it was based around trauma of the illness and all
Hmm.
the years and all the treatments and all the kind of near death experiences. So I love that you're an advocate for mental health and that you talk about your experience in therapy because I think it will help so many people.
Yeah, thank you.
So knowing what you know now, if your family member found a tick, had bit you, what would your advice be, or what would you do for yourself if that were the case? Is there a process? I think a lot of people are not, the processes that we did know, some of them don't work, right? Burn the tick off, and now it's like, no, 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 or like just squeeze it,
Yeah.
you know? I don't know. So, how would you tell someone who possibly has been bit by a tick to go about figuring out if there's something that they need to do in terms of Lyme treatment?
Yeah, I actually, two friends got bit by ticks recently, like in the past month. And what I have told them is like it's not even worth the risk. Like just go to urgent care and go get doxycycline for at least 2 weeks, because it's not even worth it to risk getting chronic Lyme. Like just go get it, and also get the tick into testing if you can, if you found it. One of my friends just got a bullseye rash, didn't notice a tick, got on doxy. Hopefully they're gonna be okay. Like, but that's why I tell people, like, just go get doxycycline, like ASAP, and find someone that takes you seriously. Um,
I know tick, you bring it, put it in a little jar and bring it with you, right?
yeah, you should get the tick tested, see what it's got.
Just like you said, it's not worth it to not do it when you see what Lyme and co-infections can do. Not only is it a chronic illness, but it can be fatal and it can be terminal, and it's not something to mess around with. So I think that
Yeah. And you may feel like you're overreacting, but who cares? Like, it's
other
fine. Overreact about it. I mean,
well, at least you overreact about anything, it's probably getting bit by
Yeah.
a dog.
Yeah. And now I'm like, I always like tell my friends like I'm in the tick hating club. And I hate bugs so much, and I hated bugs before, but I hate bugs so much more now. I hate ticks. I found a tick on my dog, but it was so quick, like it was only on him a few minutes, so he didn't get bit or anything. But like they're even here in Los Angeles, like they are everywhere. Don't trust them.
Don't
And
trust me.
yeah, if you think you got bit, even if it might have been a spider, whatever, just like take precautions.
Yeah, it's giving me X-Files. Trust no one. Am I like,
Yeah. Trust no bugs.
welcome, trust no bugs? That's well, I have been absolutely inspired by you. Your light and your spirit is undeniable. And I'm just so happy that we've been able to have this conversation. So, Rich, I'll let you take
Yeah,
over for that.
we here at Tick Boot Camp want to thank both of you. I mean, and not just your light, Ryan, which is an unbelievably powerful light, but yours as well, Maria. And I mean, this has been a really beautiful conversation. I've been really blessed to listen and to watch and to enjoy the breadth of this conversation and the way that the two of you sort of groove together and touched on so many really important points. And I want to thank both of you in particular for talking about the mental health elements of this journey. I know that's the most difficult part of the conversation to have, and the way the two of you very tastefully approach that. And Ryan, thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing your approach to dealing with this, because in my view, the most important element of this journey is the mental health element. And I don't think you're likely to heal on any reasonable pace without having a mental health professional on your team. So I'm
Mhm.
really blessed to hear, Ryan, that you have a mental health professional on your team, and that you're going on this journey with not just a series of physiological doctors, but also with your mental health professional. So thank you both for being beautiful people and sharing this really powerful story. You are going to be blessing a lot of people, Ryan, by sharing what you've done so far in your journey. And I'm going to ask you to please stay in touch with us and keep us posted on what other progress you're making, what other discoveries you're making, so you can continue to share with the people in our community how they can shortcut their journeys.
Great.
Uh,
Thank you so much.
yeah, thank you so much. I feel like I've made a new friend, and I'm really excited. We'll have to connect, Ryan, off of here.
Yeah, I would love to.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you for having me again.